All right, welcome on into the Falls Count Anywhere podcast. Charlie Turner here along with Chris DiCarlo and John Restaino. Gentlemen, it is March the 18th of 2023, and we are still freezing our asses off here in Western New York. We're just getting dumped on with some more snow today. What the hell's up with that, right? But of course, we are on the road to WrestleMania. As we know, we're talking some WrestleMania because it's WrestleMania season. So, of course, we got to talk some WrestleMania. But guys, we have a guest today that works with WWE, and I had the pleasure of working with this gentleman back in 2001. It's hard to believe it was like 20-something years ago. We were both students at Buff State College, which is now Buffalo State University. It got all fancy since then. We used to work together a little bit on 91.3 FM, WBNY, that emanated out of Buff State College, and a little wrestling show that we did with John Massalonis, the Big Mosh, formerly known as the Big Mosh. We did the Monday Night Mayhem podcast, which back then podcasts really weren't a thing. So we were kind of out on an island on a website, and we went from radio to a website and kind of, went from there. But the cool thing is our guest today also spent some time in local radio here at 103.3 The Edge as the Angry Hero. But then he took his journey out to California and is now the podcast engineer for World Wrestling Entertainment, which is so awesome. So we're going to hear about his story today. And we welcome into the Falls Count Anywhere podcast. It's the Angry Hero, Shawn Marek. Shawn, Angry Hero, thank you so much for joining us, man. Pleasure to see you again, buddy. How are you?
Hey, kayfabe, don't use my shoot name. No, hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yes, welcome aboard,
man. Shawn, I immediately saw your Facebook post and wanted to reach out to you. Your recent Facebook post when you kind of were posting like, man, it's been 3 years, if I have that accurate, you've been with WWE, and it was kind of like a surreal thing. And when I look at those pictures, man, I see you walking into the headquarters, you're hanging out with New Day, you're at WrestleMania. Just really, really cool stuff, man. There you are, in front of the WrestleMania banner there in Tampa.
Look at me.
So first of all, the perks, the perks got to be amazing, number one. But I guess what I want to do is kind of take it back before we get to your WWE journey. You did go out to California. You were doing podcasting as a paid professional out there. I know you did a show with Gilbert Gottfried at one point, the late Gilbert Gottfriid, rest in peace. Can you kind of tell us about like California and your experience out there and then how this all came to be?
Well, it's been like a long journey because, it kind of all started in Boston, actually. Well, it's all started, I guess, geez, I'll try to give the cliff notes about how everything kind of fell into place because, I did radio. I got it right into WBNY right when I started college back in 1998. Jesus Christ.
I know.
And I was, I was there. Obviously, I was there until, I graduated. And, and during that time, I worked as the general manager at BNY, and I was the metal show guy. Like that was my thing. I was into the metal bands and music and all that stuff at the time. And so I ran the metal show and the loud rock, and I was interning at at WETG, and I ended up becoming on the air, and I was on the air until like 2004, and at some point, they were gracious enough to let me even do my metal show on the radio, on like a midnight show on Sundays, which was wild. Yeah, I used to do that for a couple of years, which I still can't believe that's something that they did. Like I was like, I didn't ask for it. I think it was just a thing that just came up, and it was like, okay, great, I'll do it. And it was a lot of fun. But I got out of it.
Is that correct?
I'm sorry, and you cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shawn. Yeah, that was or Angry Hero. I'm sorry, that was under Lenny Diana, correct?
Lenny, yeah. Lenny was Lenny's a cool cat. And were you on the air too? I was thinking about this the other day. You did some air stuff, right?
I did, yeah. I did from about 2002 to 2004, a couple years, and I got to a point where I was filling in some afternoons for Bull. The last one I did, I'll never forget it, was Memorial Day back in 2004. He was off.
Yeah.
I got to do the afternoon, which was really cool. But then,
those holidays, man. That's when you get to shine.
Yeah,
they need somebody on the air instead of just tracking it. Because sometimes you do just be like, oh, just come in and just track the whole afternoon, whatever. But just actually physically be there. But yeah, so I did that, and then I just got out of radio. Or I got out of like terrestrial radio, but then during that time, I was also kind of dabbling with, with the Mayhem, because I started Mayhem after I got out of school. So I don't think, because you were already there. You already went to Memphis with John and Pharaoh and all those guys. And
we did went to the TNA Asylum there. Yep,
you did a TNA thing, and then I came on in 03, and eventually we ended up going to the Asylum ourselves. What year was that? 05? I don't know, but it was like me and John and a few other cats. And that's when we went there, and we parked next to Ricky Morton, and he didn't have any car windows. He just had I think it was like the driver's side door had like a window open, and everything else was like taped shut. And he's just like, "Hey guys, how's it going?" There's Ricky Morton there. And also that was also the time, and I'm gonna give shit to Big Mosh, because that's what I would do. Big Mosh, of course, John Massalonis. He he was the host of the show, and that was his thing for many, many years. And he's completely out of it now, which is very strange considering how deep he was into it. Now he's like the Mr. Rogers of like Mission Viejo, California, or something like that.
Yeah, he's had like an awakening or something. Yeah.
And, good for him, man.
Absolutely.
He's an ambitious guy, and I'm glad that he's out there doing this thing. But I have to give him shit when we were there, because I remember we went to Nashville, and the whole time we're riding up there, and John's like, he's like, we're gonna have Don West. I've been talking to Don West. His wife's gonna make us dinner. We're gonna go to his house. And
Mike today too. Yeah.
But this specifically was like Don West was like, he did a radio show, and Don West was like, we're gonna go to his house. We're gonna have dinner there. And we get to the Asylum, and we see Don West. It's like from a distance, and like John's, John's like trucking towards him, like, and John West is like, "Hi," runs inside the building. So kind of no sells us. He talked to him later. He ended up talking to him later, but we gave John so much crap because we're like, dude, we did not get dinner at Don West's house. I was promised a meal at the late Don West's house. R.I.P. man, that guy too. What a
absolutely
legend.
Yes, definitely.
We were promised a dinner, but it was I remember that. And then we used to do a lot of stuff with John, and we went to. I remember we went to one of my favorites was Wrestle Reunion. So that was 2005. I think Nashville was 04, but 2005, and we went, and it was in Philadelphia, King of Prussia, and this is where like all these people were there. It was like run by this one guy that kind of revived the IWA or something at the time in the States, or like something like that. It was kind of like this. It was supposed to be like this Legends kind of brand, and they had like all these old guys that were still working at the time, like Tito Santana and Greg Valentine and all them, and they had like a show in Florida, and went really well, and then they were like, okay, and that's how we kind of got a lot of guests at the time, because they were out and about, so we were kind of like making connections and stuff, and we ended up going to the one in King of Prussia, and they had a card there where like Matt Hardy was there, but it was like he was in that limbo period before like he went back to WWE, because even though he was fired, he hadn't gone back. He got rehired, and he hadn't gone back yet. So, and like the Dudley Boys had just gotten fired, so it was like their first like card. I think they haven't even debuted on TNA yet, so they were just Team 3D, like just starting that. So I remember that. I remember we were in a hotel room. So our hotel room was right next to Bill Apter. We didn't realize that until after. After all that, because we were being bullshit, but it was just four of us just being bums. And I remember trying to get into the elevator on that last day, to leave, and it was like kind of like the Legends elevator, because every time an elevator would open, it would be like Don Morocco, and then the other opens, it's like the Samoans, Alpha Seca, whatever, and the other one opens, it's like Mick Foley, and of course we're like, we'll wait for the next one. We don't want to go there.
Right.
So there's that, and just a lot of good times with the Mayhem, man. Just
Absolutely,
having,
man.
just kind of, talking to people and having an opportunity to talk to some really interesting folks that you would never really think would come across the purview, kind of like how it is now for you guys. You never expect to be like, oh, I'm going to talk to this cat or that cat. Like we would talk to Dusty Rhodes because he had a book coming out, so we talked to Dusty Rhodes. You talked to Terry Funk. I had a phone call, Terry, because John kind of put me as like a point person for like a minute, and Terry Funk call. Terry Funk call, it's like I think it was for one of his book, and he was supposed to come to one of those ballpark brawls, but then he like bailed at the last second, and like Dusty came. But he was like, I had this voicemail for years. It was like, "Oh, Shawn, this is Terry Funk. I'm gonna do the interview later. Oh, okay." And then like Jimmy Hart called me for some reason. He's like, "Hey, baby, we're doing up. I'm helping some kids. He's giving me this whole spiel. I'm like, all right, cool. I guess we'll see this. All right, baby."
Yeah, and that's the thing, Shawn.
You do these voices, and none of these are good, but this is how I have to operate because this is how they are in my head.
Yeah, and you bring up a great thing, man, because when we were doing that show at the radio station, again, it was WBNY, a little college station, and then when it went. Yeah, and when it went to the internet, like back then, like podcasting really wasn't a big thing, and a ton of credit to John for pulling the guests that he was able to pull. Because I remember the last show, one of the last shows I was able to do with, and I don't know if I think you were in Cali at that point, but I was able to sit in when we did. This was like
maybe it was the one that were late ones. Okay, got
2010, 2011.
Yeah,
but we had a chance to interview Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, and it was just pretty amazing that that little show was able to pull some of those guests
like together
after all those years, and it was just like really impressive.
Together at the same time
on the same show, yeah, not the same time, the same call, but on the same show.
Oh, that's what I was thinking. I was like, man, how'd you pull that? Like that's
yeah. We had Flair who was in Carolina, and then Hogan wherever he was in Florida. And I remember we specifically asked him about like Brooke Hogan at the time because she was in the mix on the reality TV show with Nick and all that. And the Hulkster was really cool with us. And that's when he got to TNA, and he said one of the first things he wanted to change was the 6-sided ring back to the 4-sided ring. And he did, which was a great move. But yeah, when you see where that show went, from where it started, it was pretty impressive stuff. But yeah, you're right, though. Mosh was the only guy that could time out my answer machine. Yes, answer machine back in the day. He was able to just absolutely eat the tape with his message.
Yeah, that was John, man. He knew how to maximize his minutes.
He sure did.
But it's interesting you mentioned about it being like one of these shows on the internet, because I was thinking about this, like podcasting as a concept really hadn't existed until around like 03, 04. Of all people, I don't know if you guys remember, because I'm we're maybe we're old, some of us are old here, but Adam Curry, the guy that used to be a VJ on MTV, like back in the like mid 80s, like he's kind of like the godfather of podcasting, like in terms of like creating the concept, like the tech behind it and stuff like that. Like, there's that's something I need to go more into because it exists, and I just want to like know, like, wow, okay, how does dude end up doing that? Because that's just, I mean, not many people realize that, except for the people that are like, in this industry, like heavy industry, like, day to day, whatever. But, that's the thing is, like, before, what we have now with like Apple and stuff like that, because Apple was around then, like Apple iTunes and stuff like that. But, John, to his credit, like there wasn't really much downtime between like him getting kicked off at BNY, because that's what happened.
Right.
Because he had like he would always be on thin ice with some of those people there, because he'd be like, I want to do this, and then those people would be like, they'd be fighting, and then and then the one day he decided that he wanted to have some guys in Buffalo Championship Wrestling shoot an angle, or he let them shoot an angle in the studio where they started, fighting with each other, and knocking into the cabinets and stuff. They were bashing the folk music cabinet, and at the time, initially they were like, oh, whatever, somebody they didn't say anything, but then they were just like, that was kind of fucked up, so maybe we're not gonna have you on anymore. And it was just it was this big like, oh god, we're having this big crisis of things, and we're gonna go whatever. So he ended up going, figuring out how to do the audio, like the streaming audio, and basically recording it, and not even just basically just recording it and uploading it to like a website. Not so much like on the main platforms because that came too much later, but like to the like a website. Yeah, and of all things, an interesting thing too is, and I think it was for the Jump, because he was recording with Jonathan Ash, the referee, or shoot name Rick Tobin, excuse me, who actually is doing very well for himself. Are you familiar with him?
Not really familiar with him, no.
So Rick is a producer now. Like, he's like a technical producer, probably the lead guy with Game Changer Wrestling. So
nice. We talked to someone here,
yeah. So he goes around like they're always on like on Fight TV, and they broadcast their stuff. And like, he's, at least that's what I think his role is, because I haven't talked to him in a while, but I know he's very much involved with that, which is like, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. Like, there's, it's kind of like the ECW of now, where it's not as well regarded. People don't really know about it, but it's still like underground, and he's out there producing these like doing basically the Kevin Dunn of this promotion. And but he was the guy that helped us record the audio and post it to where it needed to go and do the post and everything. And and we worked with him for years. And it was cool. There's a lot of cool people we talked to, and a lot of interesting moments. And I know John kept that going, and I would kind of keep tabs on it after I ended up moving out. But anyways, I'm just gonna go. I know you can edit this however you want, because
no, have at it, brother.
I'm just gonna give you whatever I can. So basically, I ended up around like 06, 07, I ended up going to grad school in Boston. I went to Emerson College. I got a master's in film, and I was like, all right, well, after I'm done, I'm gonna go. Well, actually, back up just a little bit. So when you're in Emerson, they have like a campus out in LA. At the time it was just like a half of a building, but now it's like this gigantic building on Sunset, which is quite awesome. But it's a big entertainment college. Like, a lot of big name, like Dennis Leary went there, Jennifer Coolidge went there, the guy that created what's that show? Great. I can't think of it. Will and Grace. Norman Lear went there. So it's got a lot of big pedigree of like actors and producers and stuff. And they always, if a lot of times people go from Emerson, which is in Boston, to go to New York or LA or go somewhere else to work and, just apply their trade. And they were like, hey, we got this Emerson this campus out in LA, it's, you should do an internship. It's something that makes sense, because if you want to move out to LA, you should kind of get your taste of it first. That's something not a lot of people realize, is that, you kind of have to stick your foot in there, or at least visit it before you decide to move, if you can. It's not
West Coast is a different animal, right? Yeah,
it's a completely different beast. And so we ended up actually doing an internship with WWE Films out there.
Oh, cool.
That was my first connection to the company as like an employee. I wasn't like paid, but it was just, that was my job, was to work on the film, basically do script coverage, reading scripts and just doing production, just working around the office.
Yeah.
Hey, getting the foot in the door, just kind of making some contacts, and at the time, there would be folks coming in, here and there. Like we had, like at the time we were working on Marine 2, which is the one that starred Ted DiBiase Jr. So, I got to meet him, and they were working on 12 Rounds, which is that was just coming out. But yeah, and it's I'd say just some people that I know, like I was actually, I just realized, like, one of the guys that I worked with there, that was like, oh wait, like he still works there as like a development guy. And it's pretty wild. Like, those are, these are some, hardworking cats, and again, it's like one of those things where people don't realize sometimes that WWE has their hands in that still, until it comes up, like it only comes up when they're like, WWE's like, hey, we got this movie and so-and-so's in it. But like now it's, but they're always doing stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where they are. And so I got to work with them. And after I finished school, I was like, well, I'm going to go move back out to LA and try to leverage what kind of contacts I have into working into film production and development, because that's what I went to school for and that's what I was interested in. And
Yeah. Tough business.
Yeah, it's LA is a hard place to live and hard place to figure out. And somehow I managed to live there for almost 8 years. But what kind of happened before that and leading into it was I discovered podcasting, like in its not its earliest form, but in the nascent form of where shows like Doug Loves Movies with Doug Benson, the comedian, like that was, you would hear about like comedy shows like Mark Maron's podcast, WTF, like that was just getting off the ground, and people were, he was out there talking to different comics and stuff. And so I did stand-up comedy a little bit too in Boston. That's kind of
cool.
That's kind of like a gateway thing for me too, because that's where I met my wife. So
very nice. Okay.
So meeting my wife kind of led to a lot of, like, I have a house now where this is the house that she grew up in. We bought this from her parents.
Oh, cool.
Now I got action figures and books, TV. But I ended up talking to folks there, and sorry, I got distracted by my books. I was talking about
well, what I wanted to ask you about
comedy. Sorry, let me just.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
So basically, go ahead and ask me. That's right. This is again.
Well, either way, I'm sure you would have led to it.
I'm falling down. I'm like Mick Foley falling off the cage here.
No, it's all good, man. There's no rules. No, I guess one of the things I'm interested in is, two questions, and I'm assuming I'm just kind of having fun with this question. I'm assuming it's not the case. But when you interviewed to actually get this position with WWE, I'm assuming you don't interview with Vince McMahon, right? You interview with somebody in that podcasting or media area. Is that correct?
You're talking about
your current position, yeah. Like, did you interview with some of the higher ups, or was it just somebody within the podcast area?
Yeah, basically what happens is so the way that I ended up getting in, because at the point that I was already working with, my journey there was like, I had a friend who also worked for Game Changer Wrestling, he's a kind of like a good friend of Joey Janela, and they he does all the video as Giancarlo DiTamo. He's you can look him up, like he's done stuff for he was doing stuff for GCW, and he had a lot of connections to like a lot of indie guys, so he ended up getting a job at WWE. And the reason why I got to know him is that it wasn't so much his production with wrestling, but when I was working with Levity Entertainment or Sideshow Network, we would need occasionally somebody to go out and record for Gilbert, because like if you couldn't get to a studio for whatever reason, we would need
Gilbert Gottfried.
Gilbert Gottfried. Yeah. We would need to task somebody to go to like the Friars Club or to Gilbert's house or whatever, and bring their gear and record the shows with them. And Giancarlo was one of those cats that I forgot how my boss got in touch with him at the time, but like he was just some guy that we worked with. And then years later, or like however some time later, there was an article on Deadspin about Game Changer Wrestling, and they mentioned him by name, and I was like, I know that guy, and I just decided to email him or whatever and just say hello. And he emails me back, and he's like, hey, you work for Steve at the time, you work for Steve Austin, maybe Joey Janela could be a guest on there. And I was able to, get Steve interested, and Joey Janela was a guest on there. And, and you could tell it was a big deal for a guy like Joey Janela, who's kind of like in his generation of wrestlers are kind of like these people that grew up with him as like a much more of an influence than like people our age. Because like, I mean, I liked Steve Austin, but I knew of him right basically when he started, you know, in like USWA and going, you know, onward. So, but a lot of people like a guy like a Joey Janela, like, you know, they watched him like in the Attitude Era and being like, man, this is like the guy that like got me through some shit.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so Joey was able to go on the show and I, you know, kind of hopefully kind of in a way maybe connected him to this guy, you know, to Steve Austin, you know, because Steve's just, you know, he's, you know, he likes, you know, talking to wrestlers, you know, and he likes talking about the business and, you know, and so, you know, I feel like that kind of made an impact. And Joe, you know, and then so once I reestablished my contact with Giancarlo, he reached out to me when I was in Colorado because I live in Colorado now. So,
Gotcha. I was going to ask you that. Yeah. Okay.
and he reached out to me and he's like, you know, they're doing, I heard about the network and he was, you know, and that was probably something I was going to be looking into, but he was like, hey man, you know, we're starting a network, you know, and he wasn't involved in it. He was just kind of just probably trying, he knew that they were looking for people and you probably had people that he was working with in that department because it's just kind of like the general media department that he worked in and they're looking for people and he's probably like, hey, I know Steve Austin's producer, or maybe just do somebody. He was like, hey, I know this guy. So he kind of put me in, you know, kind of set the wheels in motion. So, you know, I applied for the job, you know, and that's the thing about WWE. It's like, because a lot of people always will ask you, you know, and, you know, how do you get a job with WWE? And, you know,
Got to know some people,
job,
right? Yeah.
you got to kind of, well, you got to know some people, but also like, you kind of have to like really have some good like tangible experience, like something that like if you work for like a professional organization of some sort, you know, like if you work for like a sports team, you know, if you're, you know, let's say I'm just using for example, let's say if you're a you know, a media guy with the Kansas City Royals and they have a podcast, you know, and maybe you develop a podcast network around it, like you're already in a much better spot than other people that don't do that.
Right.
And, you know, or just if you work with like celebrities or other wrestlers, you know, like if you work with like, you know, like for the guys that, you know, for the cat that I think his name is Brian Last, I'm just using him as an example. Like, you know, he works for Jim Cornette, you know, well, you know, he's been doing that for years. And a guy like that could have a better opportunity, you know, moving around, you know, the industry and anywhere because like he works for somebody that people know who they are. And, you know, he deals in a high pressure situation because, you know, especially with Jim Cornette, because it's a crazy, you know, there's a lot that guy says. But I mean, just shows that you can handle that. So by that point,
Yeah.
like it wasn't just that I also worked for Steve Austin, but I also, you know, before that I worked for Gilbert. I worked for you know, all these other comedians with Sideshow Network, you know, just
they know you're not going to come in and be all starstruck and just kind of
they want to know that you're
right?
they want to know that you're a professional. They want to know that you're a guy that knows how to work in that business. And you know, because I mean, look, being a wrestling fan is a plus, but you know, some of the folks that I worked with, you know, didn't have that wrestling experience. They just were just professionals that some people were just professionals that knew how to work with talent and were willing and maybe showed to the people that were hiring them that they could adapt. So basically, yeah, I got in contact with him and I was trying to get in like the executive producer job that they were doing there. And I had an interview with them and they interviewed with, you know, my future boss, my future bosses. One of the guys, he was like used to be working at G4 for a long time. And one of the things, actually, this is kind of going back because like one of the first things I did in podcasting in LA was work for a guy named Chris Gore, who was he's a film guy who started the magazine Film Threat, which was like under the Hustler magazine, like Larry Flint Empire or whatever. And he's notorious for that. And he also was on DG4 as like a movie guy, whatever. And so I worked with him on a show called Pod Crash, where he would go on other people's podcasts and then he would air that audio from that podcast and talk about it like in between, which was kind of like this. At the time we did it, it was a very meta idea. And I don't think anybody else was really doing it, but it was kind of tasked on me to like jump in and work on that show and like edit it and like maybe also help outreach, because that was something that I didn't really have a lot of experience doing, was like reaching out, like doing producing, kind of like you guys talk about.
Yeah.
And I was out there just reaching out to different folks and just being like, hey, do you want Chris on your podcast? I know it's he's a movie guy, but this is a movie podcast about pens. Do you want to have Chris on? And Chris will come on and talk about pens, and then we would have like an episode about pens or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was just something that, it got me in contact with a lot of different people, like people that, comedy shows, and people that, I'm still kind of friendly of to this day. And they, so I worked on that. And so, but Chris, worked on G4, and this other cat, Brian, worked on G4 as well. And I don't know for sure that had an influence on that, but Chris, I know I had, as a reference, because you have to do references, I had Chris put me over.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure that maybe had something to do with it. Because again, it's working on stuff and taking those chances and all that. And so anyways, I interviewed with them. They ended up going with somebody else, this cat, Dan Reichert, who I worked with up until recently, maybe like a year ago. But they hired him. But then one day I'm sitting there, still working for Steve or whatever. And they, and there was something, I'll just say, man, there's like so much stuff that like I want to throw in here, because I love talking about this. I love being able to like kind of explain like some of this process, because I feel like a lot of people just don't do that. They're just like, yeah, I walked into Earwolf and they gave me a job, and and then I was like, hey, look at me, I'm a podcast producer.
A little more to it than that with the big leagues, though, man.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the thing. If once you become a player, you gotta.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta go through some hoops. But the cat, so I did not get that first job, but then there was a posting on LinkedIn, just a random posting. Well, not random, but it was just something about working for a podcast engineer. And I was like, I'm just going to throw in for this. I know that it's probably because it's more of like an on-site thing.
Right.
Because at the time I was already living in Colorado, but it was like, it's an on-site thing, but we'll see how that works out. So I interviewed with them, and I put in for it, and they got back to me like right away, because they knew, they already talked to me, and so I was already getting the wheels turning. And nice. I think they knew that I had a lot of experience with not just podcasting, but with working with wrestlers and podcasting.
Right.
So I ended up, you talk to like a recruiter, you go through that, and you go and talking to those folks again, the heads up again. So Vince has nothing obviously to do with it.
Right.
I mean, there's people that are like there's so many levels. There's different levels of people that are in charge of things at the company.
That's a huge company, yeah.
Yeah, and so it kind of, it's a way that's delegated, so that you talk to this person, and then they hire these people, and then eventually you report to that person, they report to a higher person. There's always a bigger fish,
Yeah.
But they but yeah, so that's how I ended up getting the job. And it was weird because they already started the network, and they already had somebody. I think they already had somebody kind of doing that role for a while, and that, I guess, that whatever just didn't work out. But then they decided to expand on it, and I got brought on. And initially it was going to be a thing where, they were like, hey, you live out in Colorado, maybe you might need to move here. And that was the plan. That was maybe going to be the plan at some point.
But to Connecticut or?
Connecticut, yeah. But then, this is like right when 2020 started, pandemic hits, and we're like, well, we got to do this stuff remotely. And it's like, well, this is perfect. I guess this is perfect. It sucks that
better. Yeah,
it sucks this is happening, but this is perfect in a way for me, because everybody, the whole industry is shifting over to using Zoom. Right. And trying to figure out, or if companies like this and like Riverside and all that, they're popping up, and people are trying to figure out how to utilize those. But yeah, I ended up shifting over to that, and there was a few instances where, because originally the idea would have been, every time we're taping a show with with like, say, like the New Day, we'd go on the road to whatever city they're in and try to record like a bunch of episodes. And that was the plan a few times. And so that's how I got to, meet the guys there and, meet a few different
You guys were
cats
on
here
a
and there.
beach at one point, it looked like, on one of your pictures there. And
Kind of what?
you guys were at a beach or something like that?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you were
Well,
in,
that's
like,
a
Hawaiian
different,
gear or something. And
yeah, that's a different thing because
yeah,
we, for that was like that was WrestleMania 37. So it was 2021. So that was just the first one after the pandemic, which was really
right.
strange because I've never been to a WrestleMania before that. As big of a wrestling fan as I was, I had never been to a WrestleMania. Like WrestleMania came to Toronto, I didn't go.
Me
WrestleMania
neither,
came
yeah.
to New York City, I didn't go.
Yeah.
I mean, John would go. John would go all over fucking over.
He'd be all over the place.
He was
Yeah.
at L. He went to the LA one. He was whatever. But I went there. I ended up going there, and that was the first time we recorded in person with the New Day. And we just did like a brunch episode, and we got went to a beach place. We had brunch. We bought shirts, and then just like we hung out and recorded some stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And plus, that was also the instance where I was with After the Bell, I got to work on something, and it's up there, and I recommend people check it out because it's something different. I hope to do it again in the future. It's like an audio diary.
Oh, cool.
Focused on Big E. And it's in the After the Bell feed. It's not in the New Day feed, but it's been After the Bell. And basically it's just us, me and my team, like going around recording Big E and talking to him and kind of, and talking to people that he's talking to and kind of introducing it. And it's a really interesting kind of like slice of, like archive. It's interesting to archive it. Like there's a point where I'm walking around with a Zoom recorder in my pocket, and I'm wearing a suit because that's the thing about WWE is like, and it's always I'm sure I think it's still this way now because Triple H probably still digs it too, where you have to wear like a full suit. You have to wear like suit coat, suit whatever. I mean, you have to like be dressed to represent, and
right.
That's why every time the people are fighting or whatever like that, and the guys come out to break it up, they're wearing suits.
Right. Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, that's what they're supposed to be wearing.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking around in the Florida heat, and this is the one where it got rained out for a little bit too. So you can just imagine like everything is just humid as shit.
Yeah.
And I'm walking around with a Zoom recorder in my pocket and a boom mic and just recording like audio sound. I'm just walking around Raymond James Stadium, and this place is huge, and there's like different spots because the way it is, backstage, like everybody's at different preparations, and there's spots, and people they're doing makeup, and they're working on things or whatever, and I'm just walking by, and you're collecting the sound, and it's just, and so I can put it underneath like certain parts of the tracks that when Big E is talking, and just doing something like that. I recommend that people listen to it. It was something I'm really proud of.
And that's what I want to ask you about, Shawn, is with, because you mentioned too, like the WWE was looking for people with experience with celebrities, so you're not walking around starstruck. But dude, there had to be a moment of like when you got to WrestleMania and you're walking around backstage, like was there like an oh shit moment? Like I'm in WWE here, I'm backstage, and you almost, I don't want to say free reign, but you're doing your thing, and nobody's gonna say, hey kid, get out of here. What are you doing back here? I mean, that had to be a cool feeling, right? To be kind of interweaved with the backstage stuff going on there.
Yeah, it's interesting watching people do their thing, their job and stuff. And, and just seeing how people are getting ready for their matches, and you see like, production pieces and things that are kind of like, oh, what's that going to be? This is going to be something. Like I remember, was it like I think it was Big Bunny. I think didn't he come?
Bad Bunny, yeah.
Big Bunny, Jesus Christ.
Big, same difference, yeah.
Big Bad Bunny, whatever. Bad Bunny came out on they did the whole thing with him on a tube, introduced him to his match, and he came in on like a tractor trailer. And and he came into the arena with it, and the whole thing was like, they showed the video, and then they cut to him coming in on the tractor trailer, and you're just walking backstage and there's this huge tractor trailer here. There's trailers there all the time, but it's just like, it's facing the other way, you know, it's not back in, it's like coming that way. So it's like, all right, well, that might do something, but it doesn't also phase you. Like, it's strange, you know. Like, I remember just being like recording. There's one point where I'm recording with Big E, like we're trying to record something with him, just talking about something, and mere feet away, maybe like 100 feet away, but it's like within eye shot. It's clear. It's pretty close enough. They're filming the backstage segment where during that show, it was like Hulk Hogan was dressed as a pirate and like Bailey came in and started talking shit to him or whatever. It was him and Titus or whatever.
Right.
And that's just happening. And you're just kind of watching it as it happens, like before, during, and after, you know. It was just like, oh, wow. Like, because I mean, they have to do, that's the thing about production backstage, you know, is that you have to like do what you can where you can, and nobody ever knows. Nobody knows the whys. Like, it kind of always reminds me of what Henry Rollins once said about being on stage. It's like, nothing can go wrong up here. And so when you watch something and you're like, man, you know, that looked really cool, but you don't know everything behind it that could have went wrong.
Right.
Because nothing goes wrong up there. You know, nothing goes wrong up on stage. Nothing goes wrong on TV. It's you know, as far as you know, that was, you know, a Hollywood production that was filmed, you know, a week ago, and they had time to edit it and do all that stuff. Like, no, that was live TV. And that was these talents, you know, you got these legend talents like Hulk Hogan, and you got these current talents like, you know, Bailey or whatever coming in and just doing their thing. And it's crazy to see. It's like kind of like seeing like a movie filmed like right before you. They're like, all right, time, here's a movie, we're putting on a movie now. You know, like, here's the Avengers, come out, you know, come see the, you know, we're just putting it out. It's just crazy.
That's awesome.
That's kind of like the surreal nature of it, because that's, you know, you take that stuff for granted as a fan, but when you're watching it, you're just like, man, this is what this company does, and this is why the company is so good, because they know how to do this stuff without anybody thinking about it. I mean, granted, yes, I mean, Saturday Night Live does it every week, you know, and it's not like it's different, but for what pro wrestling is and what what we've come to expect it as, and just seeing it happen in real time, you know, not stuff in the ring, but just like the actual, you know, interconnective tissues of it is pretty wild.
That's pretty awesome. Shawn, if you don't mind hanging with us, man, we gotta do a quick sponsor break. We do have some sponsors we gotta check in with. Be like a couple minutes if you don't mind hanging with us, and then we'll bring you back on the other side and kind of wrap things up.
Sure.
All right, thanks, buddy. We'll be right back, guys. One more.
Digits 988 can save a life. If you or someone you know is having thoughts of suicide or experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, 988 provides connection to free confidential support. There is hope. The Lifeline works. For 24/7 confidential support, just call, text, or chat 988.
right, welcome back, Falls Count Anywhere podcast. Charlie, Chris, and John here, along with the Angry Hero, the podcast engineer in the World Wrestling Entertainment. It's been awesome hearing your story, your journey to WWE, Shawn. But one thing I want to ask you about before we cut you loose, Brady, I know we said like 25 minutes. We're at like 45 minutes, but hey, man, we've been a pleasure.
Dude, that's all my fault.
No, it was a pleasure hearing your story.
I was like, when I was a boy, when I was a man, 25.
Actually, I got a quick question, Charlie, if you don't mind.
Right, Chris, absolutely.
I'm sorry I've been cutting you off.
No, not at all. No, we love it. Shawn.
Oh, you got cut off, Chris.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what happened.
Start that again.
We're just all fans, right? From day one. We're just pro wrestling fans, classic wrestling fans. Me started 1980. I was 5 years old. So when did you start, Shawn?
Oh, probably my earliest wrestling memories come from when I was like 5 years old. So 85, 80, around 86. I remember seeing Orndorff turn on Hogan and all that.
Oh yeah,
like that was
call.
Yeah, that was. I mean, that was like one of my most vivid memories is watching like WrestleMania 3. Like that was a thing. Watching that as it happened, and back in the day, you had those cheater boxes, and that's how you that's how you watch things. That's how we did it in the 80s. We didn't.
Hey man, if you have any juice, and I know Chris will back me up on this comment here, but if you have any juice there in WWE, let the guys at the network know, man. There's so much footage, so much unreleased footage they can make available on the network from the territory days, and Chris knows he's got a ton of footage, and we use a lot of his clips for our classic clips of the week. Man, let somebody know, dude. There's so much they could unleash on that library that they haven't.
If you put somebody on a gold mine.
Absolutely. I mean, it is what it is. Yeah, I mean that's true. I think there's a lot of. I think the shift over to Peacock has kind of maybe changed that, and you can kind of tell just because
they edited it.
Well, not even edited. It's just like the programming is like it's it kind of fits in with the larger scope of what Peacock is in terms of like documentaries and just scripted programming and stuff. So it makes sense. And I mean the fact that what we have is wild, and they will continue to I guess upload that. I mean, I would love to see some Florida stuff at some point. You never know. That's the stuff that I kind of got into, but I mean, hey, I think just the fact that we have a WWE network like that is just, I mean, come on. I mean, think about in 2004, we had to go out and buy those DVDs, and John be like, I got the new SummerSlam DVD.
Oh man, he was handing out DVDs like street salesman. Yeah.
But the thing is too, when you think about it, like shit, like on those DVDs, like the Road Warriors one's a perfect example. Like 2005, they had that Road Warriors DVD, and there's so much like Georgia footage on there, and like NWA stuff, like stuff that like, it has no right being available because we didn't have but the thing is, but at the same time, we didn't have YouTube, so we couldn't just go out there and watch it.
Right.
We had to like find it somehow. Like that's the thing. Like I remember getting real excited anytime because I used to work at an FYE. For years, and they would have these DVDs called Turnbuckle Memories, which were just like episodes of Florida Championship Wrestling from like the mid to late 80s.
Oh, cool.
And it was just like, and it would just be hosted by like Dusty Rhodes and like Mike Graham. They'd be like, hey, here's some squash matches and some Kevin Sullivan devil shit. And I'm like, give it to me, But that's the thing. It's like, we didn't have, now we have this network where it's like, if I want to, I can go watch stuff like WCW from 1993 that I wasn't like I knew about it. I was a fan then, but I didn't get to watch it. So It's like now I get to go back and watch it. Like actually somebody, I think it's on like maybe I'm thinking about a different thing, but like just seeing things. I mean, we live in such a weird world. Like actually, just the other day, I watched a match. It was a MSG match from like I think early '91, January '91, and it was a face versus face match between Tito Santana and Coco Beware, and it was fucking awesome.
Yeah,
because Tito's out there, he's the face, and like Coco, I mean, he could be a heel. People, and those guys, both those guys, just, I mean, people was like, oh, who cares? They were just job guys in WWE back in the 80s and 90s. Like, no, they were bangers, man. they contributed to the business to the point where people watch that stuff today and go, man, that was wild. And I want to do that, you know? But yeah, but the fact that we have access to that, and I think that might be on like an MSG card that's on the network, but just access to that stuff.
Man, I'll tell you what, if you can get a key to the warehouse, we won't tell anybody. You know, we'll just kind of sneak in there, take some stuff.
I don't know where the warehouse is, to be honest. It's the thing about it, I'll say this much, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, at least to me. The Titan Towers, as it stands right now, because they're working on a new thing, right? So that's going to be like a big deal. But Titan Towers, the Titan Towers as it stands right now, you're like, man, Titan Towers, that got to be a huge building, right? You walk in, it feels small. It feels really. I was like, because at least the lobby part, I'm like, where's the rest of it? You know,
right.
I know it goes up, but like, I mean, but they're hiding. Yeah, clearly they're hiding stuff in there, and you know they got there's a lot of spots there, but it doesn't feel as big as you thought. It's not as Titan as they say it is.
Right.
It looks like it.
It could be, yeah. You're driving on the highway and you can see the flags and the signs or whatever, and then it's gonna be building. But comparatively, to like other places, like that I've been, it doesn't feel as big, even though, but it's big in
name.
It's big in heart. There's a lot. It's like, it's just something about it. It's very interesting.
Well, Shawn, before we let you go, man, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for agreeing to do this and sharing your story, man. It's just so awesome. But real quick, before we do let you go, any quick WrestleMania prediction? The main one, the bloodline, the storyline has been phenomenal with that. Roman Reigns holding the title for as long as he has, over 1,000 days. Predictions for Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. Are we seeing maybe the demise of the bloodline finally, or maybe Cody? Now, let me ask you two questions on that. Your prediction, and if he wins, Cody Rhodes, will we see the return of the winged eagle belt?
Okay. Well, judging off of what happened, what I'm thinking is going to take place after last night's SmackDown, because you had KO and Sammy
kind of hugged it out.
Hugged it out. And the idea is that they're going to come together and face the Usos at WrestleMania
for the tag,
for the tag titles, and we'll see how that goes. But I feel like I don't think we're going to get both Usos, both bloodline factions losing. Either it's going to be one or the other.
Okay.
Either the Usos are going to, the Sammy and KO are going to beat the Usos, or Cody's going to beat Roman. I don't think we're going to get both. And I feel like it's the former, not the latter. I don't think Cody is going to win, only because what you can do with what they are doing, and they're continuing to do with Roman, especially in this thing where Cody is such a credible challenger, and it's such an expected idea that, and not to say that it couldn't happen, but I'm saying like it's, you're just like, man, Cody could really win this, he can really come out on top. But it's Roman Reigns, like he's so dominant, and I could see that making sense where he does not come through. It just doesn't happen. I feel, I don't know. I feel like maybe, because I don't have anything privy to creative stuff, but I just feel like the vibe I get is that you can keep running the juice with Roman. And because the thing about me is, people are like, man, he's getting real tired. It's like, well, we need, but Hulk Hogan's held the belt, for his first reign for 4 years.
For 4 years, right?
4 years, And I'll
tell you what, man, heel Roman Reigns has been a lot more likable than the forced, pushed babyface Roman Reigns. You know what I mean? It's just been more natural.
Yeah, no, it's a thing. It just makes a lot of sense, And I know. I don't know. I mean, I like. Look, and as you say, I'm a fan, so I like just seeing what happens.
Absolutely.
Whatever. I don't care. I mean, I don't take any credence in things you read online. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. We don't have any control over it. The only people that control it are the people that are in the matches and do the stuff behind the scenes. That's just how it is. That need, so I would like, I just want to see what's gonna happen. And look, I mean, Cody's story. I mean, yeah, if he could win, and it'll be really enjoyable, and it's just a great, it's great. But Roman wins, then he wins, and it's good, and he can continue to take that thing to the for another year. I mean, who knows? I mean, who knows if we're really banking on if the Rock's going to come back,
right.
and do that. But he might, even if the Rock was in the position that Cody's in, I wouldn't say it was guaranteed either.
There's no guarantees. Yeah,
there's no guarantees. But to the point, if Cody does win, I don't know if the Winged Eagle's going to come back. Yeah, at least not right away. If it's going to come back, it's not going to be right away.
That's so many people's favorite belt of all time. I love that belt, and
Yes.
I don't love it as much. I don't really know what my favorite belt is, to be honest.
I just feel like the current one is too generic. It feels like it needs more of a design than just the big W in the middle. That's me, but
it could use that. I think the most underrated belt that people, I think I'm not alone in this, that they could be using is the original undisputed title, the one that Brock won. That held.
Yeah, that had a short reign.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, I liked it.
It's just a classic belt, and it's like that's a belt, and not to say that the current WWE belt. I mean, because that's the thing is like you want to sell that shit in stores, you want to make replicas of that. I mean, it looks beautiful. Like there's so many diamonds and just so much like craftsmanship into that belt, and that, I mean, so why would you not want to carry something that around? That is an excellent belt, and it represents, what the company means, as the top of the food chain in wrestling. Absolutely. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I could talk about belts all day, man.
Well, hey, man,
bring me back on and just talk about belts. You want to talk about wrestling gear? Like shit, Jesus. I mean, actually, our buddy and I, our mutual friend Chaz, Joe Todaro.
Yes. So also out in Cali, right? Yeah.
Joe actually lives back in Buffalo now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he moved from Cali. I've been friends. Actually, Joe's it's interesting because I knew Joe kind of tangentially through the Mayhem because he wasn't a host down there, but he did BCW and he went to Buff State. So I knew him from there. And when I moved to LA, like I didn't really know a ton of people, but I knew Joe. And so we would hang out and we would watch, do wrestling shit and, and everything like that. And we actually had a podcast for a minute too called I Could Talk Kayfabe, where we talked about wrestling magazines. That was a lot of fun. And I talked to Joe, I text him almost every day, just talking about like wrestling stuff. And we'll talk about wrestling gear, and he'll be like, he's like, he'll just send me a picture of like Roddy Piper wearing like red bikers, and he was like, this happened on WWE TV 1990, and I'm like, oh my god, we need an action figure. Like I could talk action figures, I could whatever, man. I love the business, I love everything about it. I'm honored to work for the company, and I'm honored to just be a part of this machine because people should absolutely. I mean, look, whatever you think about the WWE and people that are that are part of it or whatever, and however you view it is your own thing, but the respect that having for this company to do what it does and make the profit that it does and have the influence that it does on the world, not just like the country, the world, the whole
world,
planet.
Saudi Arabia, I mean,
Saudi Arabia, Europe, whatever, China, I mean, it's all over the place, and it's such a big deal, and just to be a part of that operation is wild. And I would also really want people to check out the podcast stuff that we have out there. We have After the Bell with Corey Graves and Kevin Patrick. The Raw podcast team, the Raw broadcast team is doing the podcast now, and they are, they're cool cats. Corey and Kevin are great guys to work with, and I really, want people to give that stuff a shot because we're out there, just enhancing the product. I think that's really what WWE podcasts do is we enhance the product, and they enhance, the product enhances us. And that, I mean, it's all, it's all big, a conglomeration of like, the wrestling business. And so we got that, and we got reruns of the New Day. You can watch, you can hear those, and those are some of the best stuff. I'll tell you real quick. I know we're trying to wrap up here, but some of my fondest memories of working at WWE so far have been being on site, working on some of those podcast tapings for the New Day, because those guys are hilarious. And like Biggie is one of the funniest dudes. And it's not, I mean, this is no secret, but like there's stuff that like just his presence and just the way that, he is, and he's around those guys, Kofi and Xavier, like it's such a
natural, right? Yeah.
It's such a natural thing. Yeah. And which is why it was like, he's like my wife's favorite wrestler. Like he's, and she's not a wrestling fan. She just loves him. Like, so when he got hurt, she was like genuinely upset. Like I was upset too, but like, I mean, Jesus, absolutely. Man, that guy, I mean, that guy's awesome. And the shows are awesome. And, hopefully, we continue to deliver, and folks need to give it a shot. Because a lot of people think it's like, oh, it's state-run media. It's like, no, it's different. It's not what you think. It's the company doing what it does best, and it's making the wrestling business better.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, Angry Hero, man. Again, dude, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, man, in this capacity, the way we're doing this on the podcast here. But continued success to you, man.
Thank you.
It's been awesome to hear your journey to WWE, and thanks for sharing the story. And again, man, as you mentioned, you want to come back and just talk title belts or whatever.
If you pick a topic, we'll figure it out.
Man.
I can talk magazines. I mean, that's the thing. I am one of those people that has just a stupid knowledge, and I'm not like the person that's like, oh, I could win like like big trivia contests or whatever. Because like there's obviously there's spots that like I don't know, but there's things that I just remember.
Resident historian, man. Chris is our resident historian, so I'd love to put you guys in like maybe a trivia challenge together.
Dude, honestly,
we got all the Florida footage he's looking for.
There you
got
go.
All that Florida footage?
He does.
I got a lot of footage.
Send me all your Superstar Graham stuff. I am fascinated with Billy Graham as a kung fu man. That has always been like a thing where I'm just like, why did he do this? Why does he look like this? Why is he holding that steak like that? I don't understand what is going on. He's coming to the ring with kung fu fighting. He's a white guy with a mustache.
That was like, real quick, when he was in Starrcade 84 against Wahoo McDaniels for the U.S. title, he came into that kung fu fighting.
That's
and
right.
I didn't even know about that.
Which is just crazy, because it's like you think this guy was a WWF champion for years. He was the bridge between Bruno and Bob.
Yeah.
And he set the template for a heel champion for years. And he looked like this like crazy Hulk Hogan, like God, whatever. And then a couple years later, he's a kung fu man. Like it just
funny stuff, man. Like I said, Shawn, we're gonna have you back, man, because we just got started with you, man. So anytime you want to join us, the invitation's open. We'll reach out to you again, I'm sure, maybe around SummerSlam or something like that.
Dude, I'd be honored. Let me know.
Touch base again, man.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much, Shawn. Take care, buddy.
Thanks.
All right, the Angry Hero joining us, man. I know we went a little bit over here, guys. You want to just kind of scrap the rest of the format? Maybe we'll give a quick shout out to the Iron Sheik. It was his birthday this past week. I want to give him some quick love. If you want to pull up one of those tweets, John, you have to do all of them. Happy birthday to the Legend of the Earth, me, Bubba. We love the Sheik. We love his tweets, and whoever's running that Twitter account just really encapsulates the Sheik's thoughts. And 81 years old, we got nothing but love for the Sheik. As you see there, Bully Ray giving some love there to the Sheik as well. We all love the Iron Sheik, so we hope for another 81 years for that guy, because he's the root of some of our entertainment on this show, and we appreciate that. But guys, I know we went a little bit over. I guess we'll kind of cut it from here. We'll do our public service announcements and all that stuff.
Will do, yes. Well, we like to, of course, thank all our viewers on all our platforms. Of course, here, our home on Facebook and our Twitter, which is growing. Thank you to @CountAnywhere on Twitter, our YouTube channel, which you can see not just this show, but all of our shows with John, Friends with a Z Media Network. We're at 33 subscribers. We need to get 100, so please definitely subscribe and check it out, even just for a minute. And Spotify. And John, tell our viewers about the stars.
Oh, yeah. You can see in our comment section, there's something that comes up about stars. Well, what stars are is if you enjoy our podcast and you like everything that goes on, the guests, the hosts, Chris and Charlie, all that. Here's what you could do to help. 99 cents gives us 100 stars. That 99 cents will go towards basically just our technical stuff, you know, because we do pay to be with our programs and all that stuff that we use to produce this. So yeah, 99 cents. That's all it is. You like us, throw us 99 cents. I appreciate it. I appreciate the people that have done it already, because there has been, and that's great. Also, the stars helps us on Facebook have a little more, I don't know what you'd call it, a little more credibility type thing. We just grow further, more than we already are. We already got well over 1,100 followers, which we appreciate so much. But the stars, you see Charlie, you see Chris, all the stuff they put into this show, they work so hard. You know what? Send us 99 cents if you got a shot, and helps us just keep it rolling. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thanks to everybody that checks us out on Facebook. That's like our main hub, because we're able to share the show. I mean, look, we're three wrestling fans talking wrestling, and we're just trying to get established in this crazy podcast business. It's tough because, you hear podcasts, and then you hear Falls Count Anywhere, and then you hear like Broken Skull Session, which one you can listen to, right? Of course, we're up against heavyweights in this business, but any viewership that we get from you guys, we truly appreciate it. Thank you so much. And again, thank you to the Angry Hero, Shawn, for joining us, the WWE podcast engineer, who we were excited to hear about his story. But guys, we will wrap things up for the weekend here. We wish you guys a great weekend as we continue the road to WrestleMania. We're hoping to next week touch base with the Mountie, former Intercontinental Champion Jacques Rougeau, here on Falls Count Anywhere. We're hoping to have him, and we'll be going that full hour as well with that interview to talk about his career and some of his history as well. So we look forward to that. So guys, until we hit spring, stay warm, man, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yes, thank you.
All right, guys.